In this episode, we're joined by best-selling author, entrepreneur, and midlife wellbeing warrior, Liz Earle MBE.
We chat to Liz about her entrepreneurial journey, the inspiration behind the creation of her midlife wellbeing brand, Liz Earle Wellbeing, and the importance of seizing the opportunities of the second part of life and living with joy.
There are so many great nuggets of information in this episode, and we know you're going to get so much from it.
Hi, I'm James Davis.
And I'm Claire Davis.
We're the Midlife Mentors, here to lift the lid on how to achieve health and happiness.
The balanced, no-nonsense way.
Okay, welcome to another episode of the Midlife Mentors with me, James.
And me, Claire. How are you all? I was just moaning about this very British weather at the moment, but I don't want to be too British and keep moaning about it, because I think at the beginning of every podcast recently I've been moaning about
You seem to be rather obsessed by it, Claire. Rather too much.
I just want take us back to Ibiza. That's what I keep saying.
I seem to remember someone wanted to leave Ibiza.
I know.
Against my better wishes.
I know. Anyway. I was pining back after London, but I think it was a big mistake now, leaving Ibiza too soon. But anyway, what have we been up to?
Well, we went to the Lord Mayor's big curry lunch yesterday in the Guildhall, which was fantastic.
We did.
What an event. Thousands of people. Really good to be in such a historical building.
It was fab.
I guess all the great and good of the city and see all that was amazing.
And why were we there, Mr. D? We were there because we both have the freedom of the City of London.
We do indeed.
Which
and we
is
actually
fabulous.
pick up our warrants in April, I believe. Yeah.
We do. So if anyone...
I'm not sure what that allows us to do.
I don't know, but it's actually the first person that got the freedom of the City of London was apparently 1230 something. I'm going to be corrected, I'm sure, by someone listening to this podcast. But yes, it's a very old tradition. It allows people to trade in the square mile, but it's still a lovely tradition that keeps on going. And we are allowed to take our sheep over London Bridge without paying, and draw our sword as well.
Yeah. All very useful in this day and age.
Useful, obviously, in the age we're in.
It is. We've also been running our free mini course all this week, going live every morning with our optimizing hormones and metabolism course, and it's been so great to see so many people on there getting so much from it.
Yes.
It's just been fantastic.
We really love doing it.
I'm sure we'll run that again soon at some point. So if you haven't signed up to us, then do and just follow us. We'll do that again.
But without further ado,
we have an amazing guest on this episode.
We do.
I would say need no introduction, but she deserves a great introduction. So it's Liz Earle MBE, who is a best-selling author, entrepreneur, and just a midlife health and well-being champion. So we're so thrilled to have her here on the podcast. Hello, Liz.
Hello. Thank you for having me. What a build-up.
Thank you so much for being here. It's really great to have you. Obviously, I've followed your journey for a really long time. I've loved your products. I've followed your journey for a really long time, but also very excited to talk about your website and that brand that you built around Liz Earle Wellbeing as well.
And it's great to talk to you guys, because it's all about midlife.
Yes.
You know, it's in fact, we recently changed the cover line on my magazine to say "for a better second half."
So,
yes.
You know, it's like we are midlifers. You know, we're probably halfway through if we're lucky. And how do we make that half better? You know, there's so much that we can do that's simple, doesn't have to cost a fortune, and it's about having the right evidence-based information, whether that's about mental health or hormones or food or exercise or whatever it is, to make sure that our second half of life is even better than the first half.
I love that.
We love that.
So aligned with it. We talk about embracing the second act with joy.
Yeah, second act. Brilliant.
Yes, absolutely. And I think it is such a wonderful thing that a lot more of us are talking about in midlife. Obviously, we're going to touch on the menopause, I'm sure, at some point, but Obviously, there are lots of books out there now. You've got a book out yourself. And I think it's opened up the dialogue and the conversation as well about perimenopause and menopause, which is absolutely wonderful. And James and I actually go into organisations and talk about the menopause, because I love James is a qualified menopause practitioner as well, and goes in to talk to men about the menopause. But yeah, it really is. It can be, and hopefully is a time of real opportunity and excitement for this second act of our life.
Well, I think we're seeing a real shift. I think midlife used to be regarded as kind of like a little bit sad, right? People talk about the midlife crisis. People used to think, oh, it's beginning of the end, and no one really wanted to market to midlifers. They're kind of like a forgotten demographic. I think it's amazing that now people are actually, no, look, we can totally own and claim this section of our life. There's so much we can still go on to achieve. So it's great to see what you're doing in this space. Really.
Well, it kind of came about through writing. So, I've always written books, and they've always really echoed my own stage of life. So when I was having my babies, I was writing about pregnancy and baby care and postnatal health and breastfeeding and toddler foods and, all that kind of stuff. And then as I grew older, I became much more aware of the things that were affecting me and my health. And even though I've written about health and well-being for over 30 years, I still had not heard the term peri-menopause. Yeah. Nobody had mentioned it to me.
No.
And I've had 5 children, so I've had 5 opportunities to connect with gynaes and midwives and health visitors and GPs. At no point did any of them say, actually, do you know what, Liz, when you get into your mid to late 40s, you will start to feel a bit different. You may feel, you'll have mood swings, you may sleep be disrupted, you may have achy joints, all of those things, and all of those things that happened to me. Nobody at no point flagged that as something to expect. And all women, if they live long enough, will have a menopause, and you think of all the care that goes into antenatal and postnatal. Not every woman's going to have a baby. Every woman will have this hormonal shift. So why are we not talking about it and preparing women?
It's 100%. And I'm sure this has been the experience of talking to so many women that you talk to in your field of work. But for us, so many women come to us during that perimenopause. Women could be going through perimenopause as young as like 35.
Absolutely.
People are experiencing it earlier, and that can be going on for like 10 years before the actual menopause. Yeah. But what's so distressing for a lot of women is they'll go to their GP, and I'm not putting this label on all GPs, but they'll go to their GP and say, I feel down, I feel depressed, I feel anxious, I don't feel myself again. And sadly, they are just given medication, antidepressants. Yeah. And no one for a long time touched on the lifestyle modifications and the lifestyle factors that we can apply to actually start making ourselves feel a little bit better.
And it's really hard, isn't it? Because if you feel low, and we know that estrogen receptors in the brain, when they lose their estrogen during perimenopause, it causes that flatness, that lack of joy. I love the fact that you used the word joy earlier. We all need more joy, but unfortunately, lowering estrogen robs us of that. And we do feel flat, and we feel, we can have low moods, we can have flashes of anger, of rage. And all too often, the first line from a GP is antidepressants. And yet the NICE guidelines are very clear that the first line should not be antidepressants. It should be offering replacement hormones. Yes. Because only replacing estrogen is going to replace your estrogen. I mean, that's a kind of a fact, isn't it? Of course, you can numb the feelings by taking antidepressants. You can eat better and you can exercise more, and that's all really super important. We should be doing that as well, but only replacing your estrogen is going to top up your estrogen. And we've become so fearful of it, and it's so wrong, and we need to reclaim our hormones, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. There was so much fear, wasn't there, around HRT and hormone replacement therapy. There was so much fear around it. But I know with all the work that you've been doing, and then all the work that so many other people have been doing,
it's great to see the platform menopause has now. I think in the last kind of 3 years, it's really exploded as a subject, and there's a lot more awareness of it out there. we go into corporations and talk about it openly, whereas it would have been taboo
Yeah.
like 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Crazy. Well, I remember I wrote sort of one of the first consumer guides to menopause, probably I started researching it about 8 years ago. And I can remember having a conversation with my publisher at the time. And they said, okay, Liz, you're writing this great book. It's, about aging. And I said, well, actually, it's about menopause. And they said, okay, yeah, so it's about aging. So we thought we'd call it, how to age well. And I said, well, actually, it's all about the menopause. So can we just call it the Good Menopause Guide? And they said, oh, well, no, because no woman's going to walk into a bookshop and want to pick up a book with menopause written on the cover.
Wow.
And, I said, that's ridiculous. It's about menopause. It's got to have menopause on the cover. So it ended up being called the Good Menopause Guide. And it went to #1 on Amazon the day it was published. So it was like, there you go, publishers. Yes. Women are hungry for this information. They will, and even back then, and to be honest with you, I was really nervous about being associated with it because it had such a negative connotation of anybody who was associated with the menopause was past it, has been a bit unreliable, clapped out, and I didn't identify with that at all. And I thought, do I really actually want to put my name on a book like that and be associated and talk publicly about it? Because are people going to think worse of me in some way? And of course, now it's a bit like pregnancy. It's a bit like, in Victorian times or even later. Yeah. You would never say the word pregnancy, would you? It was like, oh gosh, pregnant, or expecting. Yeah, and it was, it was like the change for menopause.
The change.
We didn't, if anybody said, oh, I'm going through the change, you'd think they were crazy now, wouldn't you?
Awful, isn't it? An awful thing to have said. You're going through the change. It's just, but good for you for sticking to your guns. Absolutely.
Well, and then of course lots of others, came out of the woodwork, as it were, and just made it so much easier. And there's always strength in numbers, isn't there? And now it's great. But I can remember doing pieces with Lorraine on her show in the morning, and it was called the M Word. It wasn't even menopause; it was the M Word. But I guess it was kind of making a point that we weren't talking about it. And I know now Dr. Louise Newson, who's such an amazing warrior, and everybody needs to follow her. She now has a regular slot on the show because it's literally their most highest rated item on the show, and which is fantastic that people are connecting that way.
Absolutely, it is amazing. Liz, you've had an amazing career and continue to have an amazing, incredible career. I've written, I think, 35 or more books, built and sold like multi-million businesses.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit for our listeners, like how you got started. What was your journey from when you got started to now?
I was very fortunate. I started writing for women's magazines in my early 20s and loved it. I was a junior on a monthly magazine called Woman's Journal, and I was in the beauty department. So writing about skincare and lipsticks and press launches and all of that. And it was all, really lovely. I absolutely loved it. And it was at a time when wellness, if you like, was just kind of beginning. There were these strange creatures called naturopaths and nutritionists and complementary medicine practitioners talking about things like Reiki and crystals and weird stuff. And there was nobody really in the magazine to cover that kind of thing. The doctors, the medical team weren't interested, and it wasn't kind of really beauty. And so they said, oh, well, you're the new kid. You've shown an interest in this. You go and talk to all these strange people. So I did, and absolutely, it was like a light bulb moment. I had really troubled skin. I've always had eczema all my life. I have that gene. And I talked to a nutritionist who said, actually, do you know, if you changed your diet and you stopped eating certain things, you started taking evening primrose oil and having more fat in your diet, because bear in mind, this was a time when we were told to take fat out of the diet.
Yes.
Yeah. So it was all about low fat. Yes. We were all eating low fat yogurts and cottage cheese and all of that and skim milk and thinking it was good for us. Yeah. And of course, if you do that, your skin falls apart and your organs also aren't very well protected. And anyway, so I remember thinking at the time, that's weird. How on earth can what I eat affect my skin? That's surely I just need a topical steroid. That's all the GP gives me. That's what's going to help. Anyway, after a few weeks, sure enough, my skin started to completely change and clear. And from then on, I was sort of on a mission, and I left writing for magazines. I started writing books because I loved the research. The first book I wrote was called Vital Oils, and it was all about oils and fats in the diet. And in fact, it was counterculture because it was all about high fat food. And I was nearly sued by a margarine manufacturer who shall remain nameless, but they do have a very pretty sunflower on their logo. And they said, how dare you suggest that trans fats or hydrogenation could potentially be bad for us? Surely these hardened sunflower oils and polyunsaturates are beneficial. I said, well, actually, I think you'd probably be better off eating butter and some extra virgin olive oil, to be honest. And this is why. And now, of course, you go into a supermarket and all the labels say no trans fats and no hardened oil. So, the pendulum is swinging back the other way. And we're realizing that sugar is the baddie and not healthy fats. So I then went on and carried on writing books and researching, but always with a very keen interest in skin and botanicals and the more sort of natural approach. And it was actually a girlfriend of mine who was working in the beauty industry who said, listen, Liz, you know about this. And by then I was doing TV as well. I was with Richard and Judy on This Morning, and then I went to BBC, and then I went to GMTV. So I was sort of having a little bit of a public profile. My girlfriend said, listen, you know about this. Why don't we have a skincare company? Because I can do all the logistics side of the beauty, distribution, supply chains, marketing, all of that stuff, and you can create formulas and help to promote it and talk about it. And to be honest with you, my first reaction was absolutely not. It's far too commercial. I'm a researcher, I'm a writer, that's not what I do. And she said, oh, come on, it'll be a side hustle, it'll just be something that we can do from our kitchen table. So we did, and it just exploded. It took off. The Liz Earle Beauty Company became so big very quickly. It overtook everything else I was doing. So all my TV work, writing, absolutely stopped, and it was like getting onto an express train. We were just away, and it was incredibly exciting. And I learned a huge amount. Particularly from the inside of the beauty world, having been on the other side reporting about it, I was suddenly now in it and totally immersed in it. So I learned a lot, and we had really an interesting time. Traveled the world. I used to do TV shopping in Australia and America and all of these places, but ultimately it wasn't my passion. I was moving further away from the things that I truly love. I'd never set out to be a global skincare manufacturer or supplier, and the business was getting bigger and bigger, and I think any entrepreneur who's been through this journey knows that the bigger your business becomes, the further away you get from what really drove you there in the first place, because you end up being the HR manager for thousands of people and talking to lawyers and contracts and patents and supply chains and finance, and that is really not me. So obviously it wasn't just my company. I had partners and other stakeholders, and we all decided that the time was right to sell. So we sold the brand back in 2010, and I stayed on for a little while, but I think it became clear that matching an entrepreneur founder with a big global company can often be quite tricky. And so I stayed in for a bit and enjoyed my time. But then I said, actually, do you know what? I just need to get back. And there was so much happening in wellness and well-being that I was just itching to get back and research. And nowadays we're all into biohacking and all these fantastically good things about longevity, and that's what I do, and that's what I absolutely love, being in this space, having come full circle, having started there nearly 40 years ago. I'm back there now.
Oh, that's an amazing journey.
Love that. I love that journey. Actually, it's really interesting because when we're talking about like thriving in this second act of our life, there are lots of people, which is wonderful, that get to midlife and think, okay, that's been my career path for X, Y, and Z years, but actually I want to start something new. I want to start something that is my passion. And I think this time of life kind of gives us permission to do that to a degree. So we come across lots of midlifers that want to start something. Have you got any advice for budding entrepreneurs out there at life who want to start out and build their own brand?
I think it's fantastic that you talk about that and you encourage that, because I think we do need to be encouraged. And I think, particularly women who tend to lose their confidence, we become cloaked in invisibility so often as we age, and we need to reclaim that. There's the sense of redundancy when our children leave home and maybe relationships break down, or maybe we feel that we're not as kind of cut and thrust as we used to be. We're surrounded by young millennials who are, perhaps more technologically capable. And it's very easy to think that actually we can't be thriving in a business space. I actually did some work with Barclays not that long ago, because they had done a survey of their business loans, and they realized that the vast majority of their business loans were being made to the over 60s.
Oh, wow.
Which was fascinating. And they came up with this term called olderpreneurs, which I'm not sure I love, but it's kind of, it encapsulates the fact that,
compliment, isn't it?
Yeah, an olderpreneur. Okay, maybe wiserpreneur would be better. But, we do have wisdom, and we have got experience, which a lot of these youngsters don't have. I love their enthusiasm, and I love the fact that they are so techie and on it and nimble. But actually they aren't necessarily as wise as somebody who's walked that path potentially many times. So I think, do follow your passion. Don't be afraid of it, but do make sure that it genuinely is your passion. Because I think at any stage of starting a business, young, mid or older in life, if it goes well, it will totally consume everything that you do. It'll take up every waking hour of your day. It'll take up all your brain space. Yeah. It's likely to drain you financially. You may well have to, take out loans or mortgages and risk and all of that. So it needs to be something that you are absolutely committed to, not just a sort of, oh, I quite fancy doing this. It's got to be almost sort of life and death. I can't not do this because I just love it so much.
Yeah, honestly, Liz, it's such great advice, and we second all of that. And I think actually one of the things we bleat on about a lot is getting yourself with the right people and getting yourself in the right community, in the right space. So those people that can help you. A lot of the time we're very afraid to reach out and ask for help as well. And I think actually getting yourself in the right community of mentors or coaches can really, really help you bring up that self-belief and actually make you more able to take those risks.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when I look back, some of the things I'm often asked is, what did I get wrong and what could I have done better? And that's always a good reflecting point. And I think I could have had more people around. I could have asked for help. I could have spread the load. I could have trusted others, perhaps. I tried to do it all myself, always being a bit of a control freak and thinking that I would be more capable. But actually, I think I would have had an easier time of it had I shared that load with others and brought in experts who have specialist areas of knowledge that I simply don't have. And I think it's hard as an entrepreneur. It is your baby. You don't want to let go of the control. But I think talking to as many people as you can, and these days it's much easier, you can connect online with forums, you've got lots of networking opportunities, and there are lots of people out there. Even on Instagram, it's very clever, isn't it? The algorithm knows exactly what you're up to and starts throwing at you all sorts of interesting business advice. Or, when I was going through my divorce, I suddenly got all this kind of, information on dating. And it was like, how do you know this? How do you know that I need to see this?
It's interesting / scary.
Yeah,
like, how do you know what's going on in my life so deeply?
Yeah.
Pat, we've already talked a little bit about your inspiration for launching Liz Earle Wellbeing, but do you want to talk maybe about the overall mission for that and the inspiration for it?
Well, it's really empowering women to have a better second half and to live their fullest potential with evidence-based information. So, we touched on HRT, for example, and the ridiculous misinformation that came out with the Women's Health Initiative study 20 odd years ago that disadvantaged millions of women, literally globally, when HRT was wrongfully stopped and prescribing became much less. And, we're beginning to redress that. And I do a lot of work actually with social justice, with campaigning, set up a humanitarian charity when I sold the beauty company. And you know, I guess I've always been driven by wanting to right wrongs, societal wrongs. And I mean, that's quite a big, bold statement. And we can't really do that well, some of us can, but I don't feel able to do that on a huge scale. But I think by giving women evidence-based, impartial information with no vested interest as to how to make a better life. You know, I don't sell, you know, supplements. I'm a big believer in taking certain things, but you know, I don't have any particular financial gain from talking about things. I don't have any interest commercially in showing people how to live a better life. And I would like to think, totally unbribable. You know, I remember my team saying to me for the magazine, okay, so, you know, we get an ad that comes in from, you know, a diet cola drink, you know, do we take it? And I said, well, no, of course we don't, because that's not what we believe in. You know, I won't have aspartame in the house. I don't believe that we should be drinking, you know, fizzy drinks. And, you know, so that just kind of goes against everything that we do. So, okay, but, you know, supposing they offer us, you know, £50,000, and it's like, well, no, we don't take it. Well, supposing they offer us 500, I say, we don't take it. Okay. You cannot buy your way into Liz Earle Wellbeing. It is not for sale. It's not why I do it. And, you know, I was fortunate to sell a beauty company, and I don't have an extravagant lifestyle. You know, I don't run a Gulfstream or have a super yacht. And actually, that's not what drives me. I'm not building this business to make it enormously profitable so that I can then sell it and go and retire in the sun. I do it because I'm passionate about it. I love the journey. I love the fact that I get to talk to amazing people. You know, I have my podcast too. And as you know, having that opportunity to connect with global experts in healthcare particularly is such a privilege. And then impart that information. You know, I'm kind of see my community as my girlfriends. It's like, come on, let's share this information. And even something simple like encouraging people to get up and go out and look at the sun, because we know that those early morning infrared rays are so incredibly powerful for the brain. And then do a little bit of exercise. You don't need to do too much, but, you know, try and do some resistance stuff, even if it's just in your bedroom, some squats or some push-ups. And then have a 60-second cold shower at the end of your shower. You know, I mean, these things are simple. They're free. They're easy.
I know. We're grinning.
Things we do.
We're laughing.
Great.
Laughing.
Do you have your cold showers?
Yes. I actually am still trying to warm up from my cold shower because this flat is quite cold today. But I do like a minute and a half cold shower at the end again, because we know the benefits of that and everything you've just said, especially the evidence-backed approach. I think that's really important, Liz, because we're in a world where we can get information at the tap of our fingers. But that doesn't mean to say
where's it come from?
Where's it come from? It's not necessarily good information. I think integrity is something that we live by. Our values, steeped in integrity, because there is so much nonsense out there. People get so overwhelmed, so confused, and people aren't necessarily doing it for the right mission. No. They're doing it because it's commercialized. I mean, just talking about the menopause, there is so much nonsense now.
Tell me.
Commercialized. It's a big thing, let's jump on the bandwagon of that.
I can't tell you how many times I get approached saying, will you do a little campaign for this menopause face cream? And it's like, no, because it's rubbish. I'm sorry. Or will you promote these herbs that will help with hot flushes? Well, they might for some, not for all. They're quite expensive. And actually, why would you take that and not some evidence-based regulated hormones? And actually, people often say to me, I don't know why you always talk about hormones. I would have thought with your background, you'd be more natural. You'd have a more natural botanical approach. And I said, well, my body is made of hormones, so I'm not a plant. So therefore, why would I put herbs into my body to fix a hormonal issue when I could have body identical hormones? I'm not saying that plants and herbs aren't really helpful, absolutely. And there are some herbs totally that can help with symptoms and hot flushes and all of that. Definitely. I'm a big fan of adaptogenic herbs, all of that, brilliant. Ashwagandha, take it every day, all of that, holy basil, great, fantastic. But it's not going to top up your estrogen. No. So, let's just be clear that if we're talking about a natural approach to menopause, you need to naturally replace your body identical hormones. And, having herbs alongside, brilliant, great, but that's not going to affect your estrogen levels.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I get asked, because on TikTok, I can't believe I'm on TikTok. I can't even believe I've actually mentioned TikTok, to be honest with you. But there is too much social media, but it did one video on there that went huge for our platform, the Midlife Mentors. And so I get, because it's quite a big platform for us, I get people saying, oh, can you try this supplement? Can you promote this supplement? And I'm thinking, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to sit on our own TikTok platform going, oh, this is really great. Why would I do that when I don't believe in the product?
Yeah. I mean, some things are really good and you do want to promote them and give them some exposure. And actually what I do on my Instagram is I very often connect with brand founders, particularly women. I'm a big advocate for promoting female founder brands and shining a spotlight on little brands that don't have big advertising budgets. And, and we do affiliate partnerships with, some of the brands, and we call it Liz Loves, but it has to be.
Oh, I've seen that. I saw that.
But it has to be. It has to be something that I love. And, again, people have come and say, well, can we just pay to do this? And my team have said, well, I'm really sorry, but Liz tried it and she doesn't love it. Yeah. And they said, well, can we buy it in anyway? And they said, well, no, because she has to love it for it to be a Liz Love. So
as it says on the tin.
Kind of really, gives it away. So hopefully there is some kind of authenticity and some trust there. Because, and I say to my team, trust is something that I hope I've built up over nearly 40 years of work. And it's taken that long to build it, but you can destroy it in 40 seconds.
Yeah, absolutely.
So please treat this really carefully. This is my name on the tin, Liz Earle Wellbeing. So everything we say has to be trusted. And because we're in print, I'll give you an example. I did an interview recently for a Sunday newspaper, and they got 2 big facts wrong. I mean, just glaring omissions. And this was a proper newspaper. They should have known better. And we challenged them immediately on the day it came out. And they said, oh, really sorry. We'll pop online and we'll change it, which they did. But that is sloppy journalism. They knew that they had the opportunity to correct by just popping online and changing something. Now, if I print something in my magazine or I print it in a book, you can show that to me in 20, 30 years time and say, yes, but you said this. I can't change it. My most heart-stopping moment of every 6 weeks when we press the button to print the magazine is it all good to go? Because if there's something in there that's not factual, well, I could be sued, but also, I can be held to account. So I just think there's something very trusted about the printed page that we've lost a little bit with online and digital.
Yes, absolutely. I totally agree with that. So, just another question, Liz. How would you define midlife well-being, and why is it important for women to look after themselves at midlife?
Well, I think we reach a point where we realise perhaps that we're not going to live forever. We're not immortal. And we do have to look after our bodies. It is the only place we have to live. And we have to take care of that. And nobody else is going to do it for us. And, as we've seen all during the pandemic, health is wealth. And we can create a lot about our own health. I think there's been this whole wave of, oh, if I get sick, I'll just go to the doctor and they'll give me a pill and it'll get sorted out. Well, actually, no, we've reached a point now where medicines are not able to help in certain areas, or it's too late. And actually, you don't want to get to that stage anyway. You want to be fit and vital. We know that Alzheimer's, for example, is such a major killer these days. It's killing 2/3 as many women as it is men. And osteoporosis, our bones degenerate and crumble. And that happens really from our bone density changes from our mid-20s onwards. We know that we lose collagen in our skin at the rate of 1% every year from the age of 25. We're losing our ability to synthesize all kinds of minerals and vitamins within the body. So we need to be putting these things back. And I think we're only recently becoming aware of that. And I think we used to think that just eating a sort of well-balanced diet, however you want to define that, would be enough. And I think we now realize that it isn't. And I have a vested interest. Obviously, I'm 60 in May, and I consider myself halfway through. I would like to reach 120. And no, I'm serious. And
yes, I love that. I know.
But I want to do that with all my faculties.
Yes.
I want to be cognitively clear and fit. And, I took up running in my 50s. I started skipping relatively recently, lifting weights, all of those things. So I've seen that I look and feel better in my 50s than I did in my 40s. So therefore, why can't that trajectory continue? Why cannot I look and feel better in my 60s than I did in my 50s?
Absolutely.
And you talk to people like Dave Asprey, who says, well, I'm going to hit 180, no question. I mean, he's doing stem cells and, all those more extreme things, which, extreme by, and maybe that will reach us later. But there are simple things that we can do, like the cold showers, like the fresh air, like more vitamin D and all of those other things. And embracing more protein, that's become a big thing for me, realizing that eggs are our friend and not our foe. I have 2 eggs every single morning for breakfast and wouldn't be without them. And just, encouraging well-balanced eating, not being too restricted either.
Well, I think everything you've just said is so beautiful and music to our ears, because we have clients coming to us in their 60s, mid 60s, having never done a jot of exercise, having not looked after their health at all, and just applying some simple principles. People think, it's going to be really difficult, it's going to be really complicated again, because everything's told us you do this, and it all gets overwhelming. But just some simple things that you can start doing, that these people are like, oh my God, I feel better physically, mentally, emotionally than I ever have.
And I think it's about that mindset of thinking, actually, this is what older age looks like, and having really good role models and examples. So I work with a really lovely personal trainer who advises the magazine team. And he has a client in her 60s, and her mum is in her early 80s, and she's had a double hip replacement and she broke her back not that long ago. She started skipping at the age of 82. She can do tricks with her jump rope. I mean, she is way better than me.
I love that story.
I can't even do that.
Isn't that fabulous? I just put that out there as an encouragement. It is never too late. Take it slowly, build up. Don't believe that it's all downhill all the way. There's so much that we can do. And I think women do get shortchanged. We do tend to be the caregivers of the family. We are the ones who give birth. We do tend to be the ones that bring up the kids and run the house and have to cope with everything else. And I can't tell you how many CEOs and high profile women I've interviewed who run the most extraordinary work schedule and their families, and then they say, well, actually it's still my fault that there's no milk in the fridge. Unfortunately that is the lot of a lot of women. And then you get the up caregiving as well, so you get looking after elderly parents and elderly relatives, and we're sandwiched in the middle. And where is the time for us? Where are we actually developing and looking after ourselves, so that we're better able to help others, but also we fulfill our own potential? And that's really what drives me, is trying to enable women and encourage women to have a more joyful, more purposeful life.
I love that. I love that message. So positive. And I love the emphasis there you're putting on preventative, because I think, we're very fortunate in this country to have such a great health service, but I think it has resulted in a kind of cultural mentality of fix the problem when it occurs, rather than thinking, what can we do to prevent it actually occurring? We should be looking more at preventative treatments rather than waiting until we're struck and then looking at medication for the answer. So it's great to hear you say that.
And
I go on.
Sorry, carry on.
I was picking up on that point. I actually interviewed a senior medic the other day who said we don't have a national health service. We have a national illness service, because when we get ill, that's when we access it and that's when we go to it. And actually, if we want a health service, then we should be having early appointments with medics who say, right, okay, let's look at your lifestyle. How are you sleeping? How are you eating? What's your exercise regime? What's your stress level like? Let's sort your health out so that you don't come back to me later with the illness.
Absolutely.
I heard a book I was reading, I can't remember who's by, he's praising like that, why the medical system is wrong. He said doctors should basically not be paid unless if someone gets sick, they should basically be
Yes.
punished for you getting sick. They should
Their
be
pay is docked. I love
Yeah.
that. Let's keep
Yeah.
people well.
Yeah, keep people well, and if someone gets sick, then you get punished for it.
Yeah, then you failed. Well, I mean, that's not. Yeah, I mean, I have to say,
It's
obviously,
extreme,
you've got
very
you've got
joking.
accidents, you've got genetics, you know,
absolutely.
all of those. But definitely, you know, that to have a much greater focus on how to live well, and it's tricky, isn't it? Because again, you know, we come back to the whole point of vested interest and follow the money.
Exactly.
You know, I was in A&E recently and looking around at the vending machines, we had quite a long wait and there was nothing to eat apart from junk. I mean, literally chocolate bars and Coca-Cola, and that was it. And unfortunately, it wasn't just for us as patients. That was what the medical team had as well. These are the surgeons I was talking to were saying, you know, this is the cafeteria. This is what we have. And I'm thinking, okay, and you're going to be stitching up, you know, one of my children. Could you please make sure that you've had something decent to support your brain cells and your body going through the daily stresses of life?
Not just a sugar high, not just this sugar high. Because we were in A&E about 4 weeks ago, and it was exactly the same. There was nowhere to go and get a healthy snack.
Nothing.
I mean, we were quite lucky that you popped out to M&S for a healthy snack. It's crazy.
But if you're on your own, you know, what do you do? And you're waiting to be called. You know, you just have to sit there and wait.
When you did see people there, you know, chowing down on their chocolate bar because they are on their own, and
that was it. That was all the vending machine had. I mean, it's really quite shocking. And I know people who've run hospital trusts, and they say, listen, this is just the finances of it. You know, this is the economics of it. But you need people at the top who are empowered to say, we're just getting rid of all of this. It's not helping anybody. It's not helping our staff, our team. It's not helping our patients. And we need to put patient care before profit here, I think.
Absolutely. What advancements do you think we'll see in midlife wellness over the next few years? There's a lot of exciting stuff going on with like extreme biohacking. I think it's going to filter through to be more accessible, I guess.
I think a lot of it will filter through, but I think what I'm seeing is a lot of personalization. So I relatively recently did a whole load of nutrigenomic testing, looking at genetic variances, and I was researching it for a book, but actually I was so fascinated by it that I ended up buying nutrigenomic tests for all my family one Christmas, but it was about 3 Christmases ago. And that was really fascinating to see how gene expression can change how you access vitamin availability, or your circadian rhythm, or your sensitivity and tolerance to caffeine, or, you know, all these different things that make a difference. So I think we're going to see that costs of those kind of tests will come down. And we can already do poo tests to look at microbiome diversity, to check and see, you know, what microbes we might be potentially missing out on. You know, they're not perfect because it's only a snapshot of that instance. So it's a bit like hormone blood tests. They're not really reliable because it's just a moment in time, but it can give you an indication. And of course, if the tests are less expensive, you can repeat them over time so you can see a pattern. So I think we're going to become more personalized, and it's like with diet, you know, we're seeing apps, you know, blood glucose monitors, all those kinds of things. So I was using one recently, and I don't really eat white bread, but, you know, I had to as part of this test to see what it would do to my blood sugar. And actually, for me, it didn't really spike it. What did spike my blood glucose was a sweet potato. Which, you know, which surprised me, because I would have thought that would have had a bit more fiber, and obviously it's got good nutrients, beta carotene, etc. in it. But in terms of my blood sugar response, I would actually be better off eating a slice of white bread than I would eating a sweet potato. Now, that's obviously only one factor, and I don't eat white bread because it's, you know, devoid of nutrients. It's probably got loads of glyphosate, and, you know, it's just not something that I'm drawn to. But it made me question how I'm reacting, my body is reacting, and how best to then set that up for the future. We know that insulin control is a key thing for longevity. So that's going to be quite interesting, I think, as that becomes more widely known. I think perhaps in the future, all of us will be wearing blood glucose monitors and able to make better decisions about what we're eating.
Absolutely. Fantastic. I love that. Okay, so Liz, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Honestly, what's next for you?
Well,
I mean, how you fit it all in, I have no idea. But what's next for you?
Well, I'm actually writing a book about longevity and about how to have a better second half, and that will come out in sometime in 2024. It's just such a fascinating subject, and it's what drives me. And I'm continuing with my podcast to do similar. The magazine is continuing, social media is continuing. It's just about spreading the message and hopefully getting more women empowered and encouraged and inspired to live their best lives.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much for your time.
And we just
it's been a pleasure having you on.
Just give the URL of your website, if that's okay.
Oh, thank you. I'm Liz Earle Wellbeing, LizEarleWellbeing.com. And you'll find me on Instagram. I'm at Liz Earle Me, or on Twitter, Liz Earle Me. That's where I am.
We've got those in the show notes as well.
We will.
Honestly, so much.
It's been so fascinating to speak to you.
Chat.
It's so aligning with everything we do as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You've been listening to the Midlife Mentors with Claire and James Davis.
We'd love to hear from you. So drop us a line at info@themidlifementors.com with any questions or topic suggestions.
And make sure you join us on our Facebook page and YouTube channel. You can find us under the Midlife Mentors.
Yeah.